Fruit up, fruit up, fruit up, fruit up. Welcome, 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 welcome to Juice Champs. Honored to be here. Glad to have y'all here. Thank y'all for tuning in. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of that. Saturday night Juice Champs. This will be our regular night from now on. Only on Saturday nights. We'll be transitioning from the Wednesday show. This has been an exciting time. I am glad to be here every single Saturday with y'all. So tonight, we got a special guest, very special guest. I'm going to get straight to it. I ain't going to hold no more time. We got the Professor Spira and Lashay Taylor joining us tonight. Here we go. How you doing, Professor Spira?
Hey,
how you
what's
doing,
going
family?
on, Bobby, Lashay? How y'all feeling?
Well, thank you.
Doing well, family. Doing well, family. Honored to have you on tonight. Everybody in our community know who you are. You would think so, but just in case they don't, we like to open the floor to our guests when they come on and give the opportunity to tell our followers and our family who Professor Spir is.
So who Professor Spira is? So years ago when I was growing up, I was really overweight, had a ton of different ailments and issues and illnesses and sicknesses, used to have take pharmaceutical medications every day of my life. And eventually I got to the point where I was over 300 pounds. The top was 310 pounds. I had sleep apnea. So I'm 19 years old wearing oxygen mask at night. And the doctors told me that if I don't wear that, I might die. So I better I got to wear this the rest of my life. They have really bad chronic constipation. I'd have bowel movements that would just be like a rock, and a rock with little razor blades on the outside of it, and chronic migraine headaches every day, just ear, nose, and throat issues, a lot of ear infections all the time, just a whole laundry list of issues. And growing up, I thought that I had inherited all these illnesses from my family because my mother was really sick. She was in and out of the hospital constantly when I was growing up. So as a result of that, I was raised oftentimes by my grandma and my aunt. When I was 10 years old, my grandma passed away, and I didn't know that was going to happen. And I had developed a mother-son bond with my grandma. So when she passed away, that really changed me fundamentally. I used to be one of those kids that was real touchy-feely, and I would you'd had to tell me, don't talk to strangers, because I just say what's up to everybody and hug people. Then after my grandma passed away, I got a little bit more standoffish and didn't really want to be touched, and changed a little bit. A week after my grandma passed away, my mother had a massive heart attack, went to the hospital, had triple bypass surgery, and then her health spiraled downward from there. A few months later, she had both of her legs amputated because her feet started to turn black and gangrenous. And then about a year and a half after that, she passed away. So as a result of coming up with going and visiting my mom all the time in nursing homes and hospitals, as a young person, I'm in this environment, and even at a young age, I just felt to myself like this is wrong. This isn't how we're supposed to live. This isn't normal. I just felt that internally, like this is not right. And as I got older, I started to search for answers to these things. So I kind of lived this double life. So at high school, I was a varsity football player and a musician. And so I liked to be, I wanted to try to be popular, and I enjoyed that whole kind of dynamic. But then I'd go home and I'd be reading books and studying history and things. Like I almost had to keep that secret because it wasn't real cool to be smart and to study stuff. And I went on this path, or this journey to find the answers to human suffering. Ultimately, it got to that point where I was like, is there a cure for human illness, and is there a real solution for human suffering. And I went through all the different religions and philosophers and world wisdoms and esoteric knowledges and all. I just studied all this stuff, and I got little bits and pieces that made sense, but there was nothing that really totally gave me the answers I was looking for. Then my freshman year of college, I went to the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. It's when I was about 310 pounds. And I met this guy by the name of Willie Smart, aka Brother Air. And he started telling me about this lifestyle he had led for 20 years based on something called the Mucusless Diet Healing System by Professor Arnold Ehret. And he was telling me that this is the answer you've been looking for. Like, this is the answer to the ills of society and human illness and human struggle and all this stuff. And so I was like, okay, I'm skeptical, but you got me hooked. Let me at least read the book and see what's going on. And I got a copy of the book, read it, and it totally transformed my life. 6 months later, I'd lost 100 pounds. I'd gotten off of all the pharmaceutical medications that they had me on. I threw the CPAP unit away. I got off of that, and I had literally had a rebirth. People throw that word around all the time. You know, I'm reborn. It's like, no, I was really reborn. And you can see here's some before and after pictures here. These were taken a year apart. I was a dorm resident advisor at a dorm, and this is from my little resident advisor card. And so that was pushing 300 some pounds there, and a year later, 110 pounds, and just totally changed everything. And then after that, I didn't look back. Just stayed on the path and kept just getting deeper and deeper into the methodology, into the understanding of human physiology, deep healing, and that's where I've been the past 22 years coming up in about a month. A
lot to unpack there. But you know what though? And you said a lot, but I did catch something in there. You said you went to the University of Cincinnati. Are you located in Ohio?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm currently in Columbus, but I grew up in a suburb of Cincinnati. So a lot of, and that's where other people that practice this diet. There was a small community of people that practiced the Mucusless Diet Healing System. And so when I started, I was able to plug into that community because, of course, 22 years ago, no one was talking about veganism like the way they are now. You even say vegetarian, people look at you weird and this kind of stuff. But a lot of the health food store thing was just starting to really catch on, where you go to a supermarket and they'd have a whole separate health section and stuff, but that was kind of newer. But in terms of what people were doing, there wasn't any support systems, no social media, no podcast of people talking about fasting and that stuff. And so it was we really were like just our own little crew doing this thing. And but yeah, that went down in Cincinnati, Ohio.
That's dope, man. I'm right here in Toledo, Ohio.
Okay.
So yeah. we ain't super far from each other.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you made just a couple hours for me in
my brother Kev Ramon, he in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
So I'm telling you, Ohio is representing for the health community, man. Let me ask you this, Professor Spir. What do you think about the current state of the health community? Like, where is it at? Is it, like you said, it's a lot more info out there, but is it in a good state? Is it good information out there, or is it a lot of misinformation out there? What do you think?
Yeah, I find the most problematic element to me is lack of transitional methodology and lack of system. So there's a lot of things out there where people are saying, okay, we got to be 100% one way, whether it's 100% plant-based or 100% vegan or 100% raw or 100%. And unless people have come through our training or read the Mucusless Diet, there's generally not a real respect for the power of transition. So I talk a lot about transition diet, and I on purpose, because it's like, yeah, I could get more views if I talked about, I've done all kinds of fasting, and people in our community do fasting that I wouldn't teach or tell other people to do, you know, things that would be considered extreme. But it's like, but there's a physiological basis for what we're doing and a transitional basis. So, but instead of doing that, I really focus on transition diet, and I call the Mucusless Diet Healing System the middle path, or the middle way, because you have this huge range from the worst diet on the planet and then all the way into, you know, the cleanest of fasting levels and everything in between. And the Mucusless Diet Healing System is the only thing that I know of that can allow you to navigate that entire sphere without being overburdened by dogmas or feeling guilty because you had a relapse on something, or it's like all of that's all built in. You know, we know there's going to be a day where you're going to be hungry, and you're not, you know, you're going to go eat something that's not on your list that you should know you should be eating. But when you're following the methodology, you're always going to be moving forward. So that's probably the number one thing that I see when I look out there. There's a lot of misinformation, misunderstanding, a lot of people that try to talk about stuff and they haven't really done it long enough, or they hadn't, you know, really mastery of one thing. That's another thing that I think with the new internet culture has created a lot of jack of all trades approach to health information, as opposed to like pick one avenue and really, really learn everything that you can about that one avenue and really dig deep. And then once you have a mastery of a particular paradigm, then you study everything, but you're grounded somewhere, you're rooted someplace. And so that's what I did with the Mucusless diet. I'm rooted in that paradigm. So when I go and study other diets or methodologies or naturopathic methods, I'm coming from this very profound framework that really does look at the human body and physiology and healing from a different perspective than almost anybody out there, you know, in terms of the way that we talk about concepts like nutrition and talk about the healing in general, the body, what we're supposed to eat, why we're supposed to eat it, looking at body from the perspective of elimination as opposed to the nutritional additive principle, as we call it. These are things that are fairly unique to us, but once you really understand that and you get into it, you're like, okay, that makes sense. You start seeing it in your own life. But yeah, that's, if there's anything I can contribute, I'd love to contribute transitional methodology and the removal of mucus forming foods, you know, making that a priority to remove mucus forming foods from the diet. But doing so in a systematic way so that it can be a long-term sustainable way to live, because that's the other thing I'm seeing. And that's the reason why we get some of these folks that were the most staunch advocates of raw veganism or whatever, fruitarianism and stuff, and then all of a sudden they do one of them hostage videos on YouTube. It's like, I'm no longer promoting a vegan diet, and now I'm eating carnivore or whatever wasn't getting enough protein and this and that. And it's like they don't understand their physiology and they didn't transition. Because if you transition properly, that doesn't happen because you permanently change your physiology as you go along. So there get to a point, there is no going back. And so
right. And you know what? That's a lot. That's powerful too, because I'm in the challenge world and I'm in the space where you say we doing extremes. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm learning. So when you say the power of transition, right, that means a lot to me, because I'm learning that. I'm learning the power of transition because I'm seeing what happens when you go through the extreme. So like say, talk about, and Lashay, I know you got some questions and stuff, but I got one more for him real quick. Talk about like something like the 100-day watermelon challenge. We doing the 100-day watermelon challenge. And what I'm noticing in there is people fall off the wagon real quick and it messes with their mentality. So is that something that it could be beneficial? Could that work, or is that something you think is working against somebody trying to transition?
For most people, they're not ready. Most people they're not ready for that. Now with the challenge mechanism, it is inspirational to people to jump on. So then the question is, well, what kinds of stuff can you do a challenge around? So we ran we did a 30-day mucus-free challenge. That was really hard for people. Just not just being on all fruit, but just eating 100% mucus-free. So no nuts and seeds, no oils, or all the stuff that people get into that even in the raw spaces, none of that is 100% mucus-free. That was hard for people to do for 30 days. So I like the spirit of the challenge. In practice, I like to see challenges that incorporate transition as part of it, where it's like you get that transitional methodology in there, because one thing that people don't understand in those early days, like those early years, sometimes it can feel really easy to eat nothing but fruit for an extended period of time, to fast for I did for 4 years in a row. I did these 6-month-long fruit juice fast. I would never tell anybody to do that, but that was something physiologically I was being called to do. And my thing also, I'm kind of old school, where when I'm fasting, I don't really tell anybody. I don't talk about it until my fast is over. And so where people don't even have a clue that I'm fasting, then I'll be like, oh yeah, I just fasted for a couple months, and people are like, really? You're like, yeah. But so from that perspective, I like seeing transition, and having that be a part, because so that when people fall off, they get to that point where, man, it's getting hard, and they relapse again. It's like relapse is built into the methodology, and to the point where you're eating things that aren't gonna harm you as much. You don't relapse as far back as you otherwise would. So I noticed that as I work with a lot of raw foodists and folks that had been raw for a lot of years, but if they feel like they get to a ceiling where they can't really go any further, or they're going through something physiologically. So then it's like, okay, it's not against the law to have some cooked mucus-free foods, which I know that people like, no, it's got to be raw. I'm like, no. If you take some collard green, it's not all cooked foods are created equal. Some stewed collard greens, or we're not talking about overcooking stuff. You find that's the art of this type of food prep, is finding that right little angle so that it's not overcooked, and you combine it with raw, because the whole point is to act as a broom in your GI tract, go through your system, and leave your system without leaving behind slimy residue. And so, because what a lot of folks end up doing is they get strung out on and addicted to things like the avocados and these different nuts and seeds and the powders and all this kind of stuff. That some of that stuff is fine for transitional purposes, but you got to understand the kind of slime that those things produce, and that they are mucus forming. And so you don't want it to be a central part of your diet in your life. But so that's my thing. Like I said, I love the spirit. I like seeing people really trying to do that. But I have a real high respect. I teach people to try to really respect the watermelon, because that's a heck of a cleanse when you doing nothing but watermelon, because each fruit has its own little vibration when you do that mono fruit for an extended period. So grapes has its thing, watermelon has its thing, blackberries has its vibe, and so each one of those can be used individually, because I'm a little bit more from the standpoint of what does the individual person need in terms of their physiology, where one person might need to do a more strict some type of juice fast, while somebody else might need to eat nothing but blackberries for a period. Somebody else might need to eat nothing but grapes for whatever they're going through physiologically. And somebody else might, they might not to be eating a whole lot of fruit at all and eat a lot more mucus-free vegetables until they get their endocrine system back together. And so there's a lot that goes into that, but that's kind of where I'm at with the challenges. I've been watching watching these things come about because I never did, we never did that kind of stuff. It was all just real. We would just create our own personal challenges and talk about it after we already did it,
Mm-hmm.
But I like I said, I appreciate that spirit behind it, but
Right.
it's like if we engineer challenges that really encourages people to be mindful of the transition and apply that to their individual physiology, then I think that can be really sustainable, and teach sustainability.
I think so too. And and this is the thing. This is why we learning so much. And that's why I love the 100-day challenge, because we getting so much data from it.
Yeah.
And it allows us to see how we can move forward. Because the longest challenges I ever did was 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
So when you move on to these type of challenges, you see so much. And people tell you so much because they're going through it. So right. I think that's something that could work. Maybe we could come together or something, man, later on and throw a challenge together with the transitional aspect being the main aspect of it. I like that.
Yeah. Most
that's dope. Lashay, go ahead. I know you got some questions or you wanted to chime in on anything.
I mean, I don't have questions, but I can most certainly validate what he says about the importance of the transition, because I fell victim to the dogma when I first got into the raw vegan lifestyle, because I got into it for health reasons. And I just wanted so desperately to overcome the issues that I was having. So I wanted to be all in for raw veganism, and I was, but I didn't have coaching. I was just following different personalities and got into a certain app that had a ton of raw vegan recipes. I transitioned with a lot of the mucus forming raw vegan recipes, nut heavy, avocado heavy. I use so many cashews. And even though it provided some level of relief because I wasn't eating standard American diet stuff anymore, like standard American vegan junk food and all of that crap, I plateaued. There was still so much healing, and mucus was actually a huge part of my health issues. I was so short of breath, I really couldn't breathe. So that's how I stumbled across your information with the Mucusless Diet Healing System. And you always talked about the transition. And even though I heard about, I heard it, I read it, I still felt like I had to be on the extreme end of it because I just wanted to hurry up and clear the mucus. So I got into the fruit fasts and things of that sort. And honestly, it helped. Getting into a 30-day fruit fast did help relieve and clear a lot of the mucus. However, I started falling into this trap of going from the extreme of raw veganism and wanting and trying so hard to be this fruitarian, but really struggling with cravings and struggling with the addiction to the old standard American diet stuff. So I'd swing from one extreme for a couple of months and then go to the other side of the extreme again, back to those mucus forming vegan foods like vegan hot dogs and vegan tacos and going to Chipotle. And so it was just it's because I didn't allow the transition. I was and it was all or nothing. And when I relapsed, that mental part came into it. I come really hard on myself. The negative self-talk was crazy. It actually put me in a depressive state. And the lifestyle actually started to become worse for my health than better for it because of my state of mind. So it didn't matter how healthy I was eating at one point, when I should have been feeling the physical results, the stress, the depression, because I was always anxious and always thinking about food. And even though I didn't have a eating disorder, I definitely had a disordered eating thinking pattern, because I was always afraid of making a bad choice, even though I had a choice to not make a bad choice, but there was that addiction aspect to it. So I'd do really good and feel good about myself for a little bit. And then I'd have one slip up and then completely dissolve. So, I mean, I've grown past that at that point. However, that was a part of my journey. And that's when I actually, even though that part of my journey was hard, in hindsight, I did a lot of physical healing because I still was eating a lot of raw vegan food. I was still doing a lot of fruit fasting, and I was doing it imperfectly. However, I was still doing it. And in hindsight, I was like high raw versus just eating like crap majority of the time. And after that, I got to have like that perspective, that hindsight perspective, like, okay, I don't need to be perfect. And that's when I like started adopting let's add some more herbs into my diet. So now I'm going to add some extra healing modalities. However, I'm going to eat, like fruit throughout my day. But at night, if I want to have like a whole food plant-based cooked meal, I can. And that was so much better for me because it was just like that transition. Now it's to a point where I just like really, for the most part, want to eat mostly living foods, mostly fruits, because it just makes me feel the best. And I've gotten over that mental part of it, like that dogmatic part of it. Like you follow so many of these personalities in this community, and they literally say the most preposterous things. They'll be like, cooked food is poison and this and that. Okay, even if there is an undertone of truth to it, you know what I mean? Like, it's not good for people who doesn't know anything about health and they're trying to learn, and they're following all these personalities, and everybody's got their own school of thought, and everybody's got their own dogmatic view of health. And just, you've got the natural hygiene community and this and that, and like all of it is great, but you can't do anything without being criticized, even though you're still doing better than where you started. So it's important for people to come in here just focusing on being better than how they were. And yeah, getting into a transitional health program, because it is far more sustainable than trying to dive straight in, especially depending on what kind of personality you have. If you have an addictive personality, then it's better that you transition into it and you eliminate things, like gradually over time. So I'm just co-signing what you were saying because I come from the extremes of it and being affected mentally, and just that yo-yo dieting lifestyle is what it ended up becoming. But now, we've evolved beyond that, but it was there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. That what she's just talking about is what most of the community is facing. That in and out of the cycles, that in not being able to get things right. That Professor Spir, what is the problem with cooked food, raw food? Why is it such a big deal and a divide when it comes to that subject?
Yeah, well, that's it's a good question. I'm gonna read this. This is my annotated Mucusless Diet Healing System. I'm gonna read a little part out of there. So this is the words of Arnold Ehret, and he said this is a section called Raw Food Diet, and because throughout it he analyzes. This is in lesson 12, Confusion in Dietetics, but he says at present, and this was written in 1920. At present, among the vegetarian health seekers, raw food diet is in fashion. No doubt it represents great progress, but the arguments are partly wrong and lead to mistaken and fanatical extremes. They claim all cooking destroys food values, but it should be said properly that wrong cooking destroys healing value qualities or efficiency of foods and can even cause them to become acid forming. The raw food experts hint on the same wrong stress as all others, that is the higher food value. So when he says food value here, he's talking about nutritional concepts. So the idea of you're destroying the nutritional content of a food item every time you cook it. The paradigm that Ehret offers, the shift is we're not looking at foods to try to get nutritional sustenance from it, but we're looking at foods at how well does it cleanse and help the body eliminate mucus and pus and poisons and clean the blood and get the lymphatic system moving. And so that's the paradigm shift. So we go from a paradigm of, the living, it's the living foods in this. So it said that the wrong emphasis. It's the living foods. In our opinion, they're not superior because they're so great nutritionally. They're superior because many of them are the best eliminators in the body. They cleanse the body the best. And so when I have somebody that comes to me and they have a real bad, I can tell they're we would call it a lean type or a uric acid type, a real skinny kind of person that can eat anything, but they remain real skinny. I get them on green juices immediately because I want to neutralize those acids in their system and be a little bit more gentle with their transition. But sometimes those are the people that they'll crave the 100% fruit, raw fruit, but that's actually too aggressive in the long term. That's a little too aggressive for their physiology. So one example of cooked food that has helped numerous people that I've worked with that comes from the raw food side of things is because I'll get folks and they're no longer having natural bowel movements, so there's just stomach and bowel issues that were not healed doing what they were doing. And so I'll put them on, there's a recipe we call baked banana surprise. So we're one of the only people that talk about cooked fruit and baked banana, baked apple, making applesauce out of baked apples or baked peaches. You can, and you're not cooking this stuff for a long time. You cook it just long enough. That's what Eric was saying here. When you prepare these things, you don't want to overcook stuff. It's just long enough to make it so that it eliminates even better than some items that eliminate eliminate better after they're cooked properly. And that's kind of the point that he's making there. But I've seen that because the benefit of, from a methodological standpoint, cooked fruit in that manner, you're getting something that's 100% mucus free. It's not as aggressive as the raw fruit in the system, but it's not like having a salad. You're hitting things right in this, like I say, the middle path. It's right in between, and it's just such a great tool. But that's how we look at all of these different items, whether it's a cooked item, a raw item, the way that you combine it, the way that you do prepare it, the way that you cycle in fasting, periods of fasting. Arnold Ehret invented the term intermittent fasting, but it was stolen and taken in the way that people talk about and think about intermittent fasting today has been co-opted, and it's gotten away from the original definition and meaning. But real intermittent fasting, real intermittent mucus-free eating, incorporate that in there. The other thing we do it's controversial to some people is lemon juice and distilled water enemas. And so some folks have a big problem with that. And that's fine. No one's forcing anybody to do anything. But I will say that, the elimination of mucus has been very good with the with using the lemon juice distilled water enema, and especially during fasting periods. And because when you're in that phase of with the fruit and all this stuff, there's a lot more toxic waste that's actually formulating and sitting there that's not being flushed out of the system. And so to help a little bit, that's we've found a lot of, and somebody had asked me from that listens to your podcast, they're like, you need to explain what the enema is, because a lot of people don't know. So the enema is you take warm distilled water and lemon juice in an enema bag, put that in an enema bag. Then there's like a tube that connects to a little anal thing, and you insert in your back end put the water in, and there's a whole methodology in terms of how you lay and all this stuff. But basically, you hold it for as long as you can, and then when you get up, get on the toilet, and it's going to flush out whatever's going on in there, whatever slime, and that's when you start seeing worms coming out and slime. And people that have been doing stuff for years, like I've had people I've been raw food for 5 years and 10 years and this, but I never did enemas. And they start doing enemas and being more transitional with their diet, and they got a whole like toilet bowl full of worms that come out because they do it like a week's worth of enemas or something, and then the slime and just stuff that they had no clue was up in them starts coming out. So for me, that was a real game changer, because it really helped with cravings of in those early days when I was still craving meat and still craving dairy and was really wanting to get off of it. But as long as those residues are still in your system, you're gonna, you probably crave some of that stuff. But I got in the habit, if I would crave something that I knew I should not have, I'd grab my enema bag and get that going and flush out, and boom, I was good. that whatever that craving was out of there.
I hear, and you know what? And when it comes to the enemas, I hear a lot of people speak against enemas. I hear a lot of people for them too, so it's definitely an argument. Now, with enemas, are they, somebody asked, and I was just going to ask this, are they better or are they equivalent to colonics?
They, to me, are just a totally different tool. So, and so for me, an enema doesn't replace a colonic, and a colonic doesn't replace an enema. They're separate spheres, because with most colonics, unless you have a home colonic system like a Kalima board, you're not going to be able to put lemon juice in there. And one of the things that we've done is made a mini art form of adding the lemon juice, and how I started doing lemon rind juice. So for us, this is the type of intensity in terms of a challenge. Like, this would be the kind of stuff we do in our community, where it's like, okay, can you do a 10 lemon, or I used to do 20 lemon with the rind. So that's the majority of the liquid is lemon rind juice, which is intense if you're not used to that. And with the water, and then hold it for like 15 minutes, so that's the kind of stuff, in terms of that like challenge. It's like, okay, can you do 10 lemons and hold it for however long? And because with the lemon has that astringent property that gets into the lining of the colon and intestines. And the cleaner you get, the higher up into your intestines the liquid's going to go. Because a lot of people assume, oh, you're only cleaning out your colon. It's like, no, we've been doing this for years, and we've seen it go if you're on a longer fast or something. We've seen the liquid can go all the way through. I'm not advocate for that or saying that's great, but I'm just saying what people think they know about enema. Most of those people have never done it. They've never done it for any extended period of time. They've not done lemon juice, because I'm not talking about coffee enemas. I'm not an advocate for those. It's a whole different realm than doing water enemas. But yeah, colonic, you can't. Like I said, you're not going to be able to bring a gallon of lemon juice and be like, can you put this into the colonic system? And but it's something that I'm an advocate for. People want to do that. It doesn't replace, to me, nothing really replaces that regular use of the enema when you understand the power of that tool, and you're using that tool to help you along with your transition.
Facts. Like, okay, so enemas, colonics. So you say raw food, cooked food. What is the optimal way of eating? What is the optimal diet? Like, what should people be eating every single day on a regular basis?
So that it depends on where they are physiologically. I mean, you can approach answering that from some different perspectives. So if you try to, because you almost have to dig into different paradigms and borrow different paradigm, and then ask, well, what's the most useful paradigm to answer that question from within? So a lot of people would say fruit, one fruit meal a day of a type of fruit in season. Physiologically, we're fruit eaters, just to observe objectively the way our GI tract, our teeth, all that kind of stuff. So that's one viewpoint. That's one paradigm. Then you get into, in the Mucusless Diet Healing System, Arnold Ehret has this theory of or it's really a law, a physiological law of vitality equals power minus obstruction. And what that means is, as soon as obstruction becomes more in an organism or in a body or in anything, as soon as there's more obstruction, then the ability to power through that obstruction, that organism dies, or that engine dies. And so vitality equals power minus obstruction, the goal of the transition is to remove obstruction from the body. Now, when you look at the body as an elimination machine, and you're observing all the different ways that the body eliminates, from the skin to your bowels, to people wake up and there's crust in your eyes and ear wax and little pimples or whatever. And then in the breathing process, everything you're doing is attempting to clean the body out. And so Ehret says that the body is an air gas engine. So that's where you get segment of people that then say the highest potential level of human would be a human that might not really eat at all or eat very little. So somebody that might have one fruit meal a year or one fruit meal every 10 years. We're talking transition. I'm not an advocate of that. We're kind of talking philosophy here in a different type of paradigm. So that would be, some people would call that like a breatharian. Those words have gotten co-opted and screwed up, so I don't even use that anymore. I had a band called that, but at one point, but people they get strung out on these concepts because they think that whatever you're supposed to be, that you need to do that right now, without taking into account the generations and generations and tens of thousands of years that humans have transitioned to the poor diet that we're in now. You can't take a newborn baby and just start feeding them McDonald's. And some people try, but they have this nasty Similac and formulas and all this nasty stuff that literally will properly transition a baby to be able to withstand and handle the horrible diet, the horrible standard anywhere diet, as I call it, all the fast foods and all this mess. You have to transition to be able to even handle that stuff. If you're going in the opposite direction, we have to transition away from generations. Because one question, like, to put things into perspective, one of the books that Arnold Ehret wrote was called "Thus Speaketh the Stomach," and it's from the perspective of your GI tract and your stomach and your colon and it. And one thing to think about is, when's the last time you had a fruitarian ancestor? How far do you have to go back? Some of us don't have to go back as far as others. And so these are perspectives. And this is where we talk about understand the history of your stomach, because that's going to help you inform and help and dictate the type of transition that you're going to need for your body. Because if the history of your stomach is going through potato famines and all kinds of, just that type of physiology, a European type of historical physiology, then you need to transition accordingly. If you're like, I found this out after practicing the diet for years, but my father grew up on Trinidad and Tobago, and they didn't have a lot of money. So just for the first 18 years of his life, he's actually just, by necessity, he's living off of a lot of the fruit that they can get that's just growing naturally on the island, because they couldn't afford nothing else. And so that was interesting. Then he moved to United States when he was 18, and of course got into the American way of eating, and that, so on and so forth. But that is informative to me. It helps me understand the type of transition I've been able to do, the kind of cravings that I've had, because it'll on one hand, it can be really easy for me to be on all fruit for periods of time, or do fruit juice fasting and that kind of stuff. But then on the other side, there's, I'm dealing with the stuff from my mom's side of the family physiologically, and I could see that has certain cravings that I've had to deal with over the years. So that's really, I have a video where I say what I eat in a day on the Mucusless diet, but it's very different from most people do what I eat in a day, and they're showing all the stuff. It's like a 3-hour long video where I take you through what my diet looked like from clusters of years, so because the way I ate from years 1 to 3 was different than 4 to 6, was different from 7 to 10, was 10 and 11 to 15. Each little period or season of transition is it's been quite different, and so, but that's and I did that to try to expand people's minds on that topic, because it's hard. I see it hard for people to wrap their head around that type of longevity, because people are really taught this straight line. It's like you need to get to the optimal thing as soon as possible. This is where you're supposed to be at. Because like people will be surprised that they'll be like, well, aren't you 100% mucus free all the time? Or have you been? And I have to explain to them, I practice the Mucusless Diet Healing System. That includes periods of being mucus free. That also includes selected mucus forming foods that you use to help transition yourself, selected cooked foods to help transition, incorporating the fasting, incorporating the colon irrigation, incorporating the sunbathing, and all the naturopathic things, the exercise, it's all part of the system. But so that's, so you could even look at it from, we should be eating mucus free. So where that would be raw, because sometimes I'll encourage folks to be like, okay, if you want to be raw, be 100% mucus free and raw, which is much harder to do. Take away all the nuts, all the fats, all the starches, and do that. That can be a goal, because that can be a place where you exist, or all fruit. Or like I said, we have people in the community that's practiced a diet for over 40 years, or at least one person in the community, Brother Air. But he fasts most of the year. Again, we don't quote that. It's the logical conclusion of the transitional work he's done. So for the first 10, 20 years of his transition, he wasn't doing a whole lot of really long fasting, or there wasn't 100-day watermelon kind of stuff. It was really by the book transition diet. Once he got to year 20, he did a whole year eating nothing but fruit. And then ever since then, it was like the next 20 years, he might have eaten 9 months out of 20 years. I mean, he only eats 1 or 2 months, if that, out of the year. And a couple years ago, he did a whole year where he didn't eat anything, no solid food for an entire year. And so that's what one person did with these tools. So that's another thing where I try to, instead of looking at, okay, we all got to get to this, have the same goal or get to the same place. It's like, no, that becomes a personal decision of, well, what is it that you want to try to do? Because some people use the Mucusless diet. They come to it because they're sick. They don't feel good. They just want to feel better. They want to overcome some of their ailments. They start practicing the principles. They start feeling better, and they're cool there. They're cool at that space of just feeling better and being there. There's other people that want to try to transform their physiology to get to a point where it becomes impossible to age, impossible for the body to wither away and die in the traditional ways that it goes down. So there's those people, you know, one of the things there's with the Mucusless Diet book, there's philosophy along with practical, applicable methods. And I always tell people when you read it to don't get caught up if you don't believe every philosophy that's in there. Don't worry about that. Take the methodology that applies to everybody and apply that to your situation. But there is, I think, beautiful sections that talk about the transformation, the potential transformation of humanity going down this path and going down this road. And through the transition diet and through getting people more mucus-free, you really solve so many of the ailments of society in terms of the bad behavior. There's no, because the first question that we ask anytime we see some kind of tragedy is, what were they eating? Not what were they thinking, because most people, oh, what were they thinking? Somebody goes in and goes into a black church and shoots the place up, or goes into a school and shoots a place up, or does whatever, just all these insane things, putting children in the back of a truck and taking them someplace to be slaves like that. The slavery, the itself, all of these things. What's at the foundation of all of that behavior and mindset is pus and mucus eating. And I dare anybody, okay, if you disagree, then go look at it. Go look at what those folks were eating, and I can guarantee you none of the slave drivers, none of the rapists, none of the murderers, none of these people that are committing suicide, they're not eating fruits and green leafy vegetables for an extended period of time. I'm not talking about somebody who just does it for a couple years and without transition and then gets depressed and has it's a mental breakdown. I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about somebody that really lives this life for a long time. You're not stimulated to behave in that manner. That's not in you. And it's not that you're soft. It's not that you're not going to defend yourself. And I'm not a pacifist, and we're in our community, we're generally not, we're not going to, just be like, oh, we're just, people come and messing around. It's like, it's okay. It's like, no, it's not okay. We ain't, nah, it's not the vibe.
You actually get a little tougher actually in this.
You really do. You're tougher, and it's coming from a real place, so it's a real, like you say, hard, who's hard. It's like, yeah, this is where it's at. But you're peaceful in terms of, you don't get no joy out of hurting other people. You want to just keep it peaceful, keep it cool. And as long as no one messes with you, you don't mess with nobody else, and that kind of thing. But that is the behavior is something that's something I really like people to really understand and see, that because every time, just turning on the news, turning on the internet in general, it's just all this stuff down. It's like that we just had the 4th of pus lie the other day, and that's another one. You ask yourself, all these people, because they're all the people that were injured all around the country. There's people that lost their eyesight, that had fireworks hit them in the eye, that lost limbs and fingers and all this kind of stuff. For what? Because you want to blow something up. Yeah. That's stimulation. That's coming from pus and mucus. A total disrespect for nature, wanting to try to control nature and manipulate it like you're better than, oh, I can have fun with these fireworks and all this kind of stuff. And then but that's all coming out of that, like that's like hot dog type of, you just imagine when you don't really understand this until you get off of those foods, how much of a drug they are, how much of a stimulant these things are. Is you eat a hot dog and now you're go pick a fight. Let's go there. We want to go drink now. Let's go set off a firework. It's like, it's not about just being calm and collected, breathing the air, enjoying the trees and the grass under your feet. Like, you don't have any sophistication on that level when you're so stimulated. You're so high off of the dead animal flesh and the dairy. You're just in this state of perpetual, it's like highly functioning addicts, pus and mucus addicts, where and a lot of people are not highly functioning. You know, a lot of people don't function well at all on that stuff.
Facts.
You know, but that's the thing. So that's the world as we see it. When we look out there and we see all these people and just so much, we call it bizarro world. Everything is in inverse. All the value system, the things that people value, most of that stuff doesn't mean anything in terms of the longevity of the humanity and all that. They've just, and most people are living lives that they didn't build themselves. They're living lives that somebody else built for them. It's all it's the value systems, the belief systems, the way you're supposed to feel when you see a certain thing. All that stuff has been programmed into people, and food has been the main way to make people docile enough and to control them enough so that they can be programmed in these various ways, in whatever ways that they want to. You know, as you say they, but it's just people that want to control other people. Because I don't, you know, without getting all conspiratorial, you don't have to do that. You can be like, look, the history of pus and mucus eating is because you have lost control of yourself. You get a kick out of and feel good about controlling other people. So we create these systems and these infrastructures that then ultimately allow a few people to try to control the bodies, minds, and spirits of large groups of people, as opposed to teaching them to actually be self-sufficient, teaching them what freedom really is. That's not on the agenda, because it's like we'd rather just go to the football game, go to eat your hot dog, go to the restaurant, go to McDonald's, you know, watch Real Housewives of whatever city, you know, just like stay in that space, stay right there. Don't get out of that, because if you start getting out of that, then they're gonna do like where they came after us in the whole what happened over the past 3 years. I had to delete like 50 of my videos because they're like, oh, you know, all these crazy stuff that's out there and stuff that's there's videos on YouTube of people, of cops shooting people and fights and all this kind of stuff. I'm on here, I'm not cussing. I'm saying words in a particular sequence, and they come in and they start throwing, they're like, you got to shut that down, and giving me strikes and all this because I was saying things and backing it up with receipts to warn people about you might not want to do certain things that the government's telling you to do, you know. And so that was a very interesting period watching that. But that's the kind of control that again, the only reason that you feel like you even want to be in that position to try to control other people, it's not this ideal of service. I want to serve the people, and I be their representative in their government and politician and this kind of stuff. It's like, no, that's constipation, that you enjoy controlling the lives of other people. And that's but once you start to clean yourself out, you don't want that. You don't want that responsibility. You'd rather teach somebody how to be self-sufficient, grow their own food, get off the grid, disconnect from the insanity, and then leave fruitful lives that don't destroy the earth and actually perpetuate the human species, as instead of degenerating humanity with the children that you're having and the grandchildren. Now you're starting to have children that are better than you, that are cleaner than you. And to me, that's what we should be trying to do is actually reconstruct and generate humanity.
Yeah. Problem is that we are their food. So so they control our food because you, like you said, their lack of control of themselves. Without our energy, without our labor, without our acquiescence, without our submission, without our complacency, our apathy, our being docile, they don't have any control. You know, they really aren't anything without the rulership, so to speak, without them having the podium to say that, well, you know, we have the pen, we are the legislators, we get to write what your life is, you know. And then this illusion of inclusion with the voting system, like, it's all really a sham. I do believe that it is coming, it's crashing down. I think it is a good time to be alive, because there is a evolution, so to speak, of people waking up, and a lot of, you know, like, there's extremes of how we go about doing things and cleaning and healing our bodies, but at least we're doing them, you know. At least there's like this awakening, so to speak, of people being introduced to this concept and these ways of living. Because as you put it, there's like this inversion of reality where the value systems have been completely like placed upside down. Like, you used your father for an example, how he lived in Trinidad and Tobago, and because he was poor, he ate off of the land, and that's considered poor, even though that's probably the richest thing ever, that what should be valued the most. And it's like, when eating from the land becomes your normal, you actually probably have like the highest vitality without realizing it. You don't know it because there's no perspective of ever have being sick or anything like that. So you kind of take good health and vitality for granted, so to speak. And then, but there's this like skewed perception of wealth and for more. So wealth means eating steaks and eating all this meat and this and that. So people who are actually pretty healthy, living a good life, living from the land, living a really rich existence, are now comparing themselves to people with all this money who have access to the sea roaches and the steaks and the, you know, the cows, the animal flesh, the chickens. And now this is the illusion of better that we're striving for. So he comes to America and starts eating crap, and probably ended up with a deteriorated state of health. Hopefully there was something to compare it to, so he could realize, like, I wasn't really dealing with this when I was.
Well, the one thing that I noticed was, to this day, fruit never went anywhere. You know, even if they get into eating other stuff, fruit, it was always in the house and was always around and was eaten every day. And so that's the carryover, you know, is that fruit. And then in times when illnesses would arise, then, you know, I mean, they'd seen what I've been doing, but would just take a look at that and like, okay, let's see, let's get back to the fruit, back to the fasting and these things that we know. But you're right, it's the allure, it's the trappings of something, the trappings of the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and coming to America and having this wealth and being able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make the money and then live the life. And you know, now we have the culture with all the everybody wants their Bugatti, or they want this, and go and to all the clubs and be famous and all this kind of stuff. And what's really getting out of hand to me is this plastic surgery stuff. It's like, I didn't see that coming, and all of a sudden I'm looking up, I'm like, what is going on? What is going on with this? You know, like, say, don't get me wrong, if I'm in a car accident, it's nice to have a couple plastic surgeons that are good at what they do if you need it. If you're in a car accident, you get shot, something happens, it's like, yeah, try to hook it up if you can, if something happens to me. But besides that, this stuff that people are doing where they look perfectly fine, and they start cutting things up and injecting things, and the butt lifts and this and that. It's like, come on now. But it goes along with that pus-based value system that has been infected into the people.
It's transhumanism. You know, humans are getting away from their humanity, and because we are eating such a death lifestyle, you know, we live in a death culture, we're eating blood foods, we're eating these things that drain us of our energy, so we end up accelerating in age a lot faster than we're naturally designed. So yeah, so in order to not age as quickly as we are, it's okay, let's get a facelift instead of just like reverse aging by having discipline and putting real food, real hydrating things that's going to, you know, promote the collagen and the skin elasticity and all these things more naturally. But because they're unfamiliar with that or lack discipline, or because of disinformation or the suppression of this way of life by the powers that be, it's like, yeah, let's follow celebrity culture and get butt lifts, and let's get our skin cut and lifted, and it's just like it's that transhumanism. And I feel like seems like a lot of women are starting to follow trends being set by the trans community, like the transsexual community. So like a lot of men who do these things to alter themselves to look like women, like biological women, are starting to do these things to themselves to fit this like caricaturized version of ourselves, you know, like getting away from the natural essence of the divine feminine, because these lines that are being blurred by this like alternative lifestyle movement. And I have nothing against anybody, do whatever you want, but it is interesting how women are starting to act like men who are acting like women.
Yeah. It was funny because I was thinking about that today, but just in general, and I'd get interested and get y'all opinions on this, but yeah, because there's certain things as now that I'm getting older and I have to monitor. I'm like, okay, is some of these the way that I feel? Is this me becoming an old man looking at the young people today, or are these things really happening that I'm looking at? So I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, what is going on with this general masculinity? Wait a minute, like it's something that's changing. Like I said, the docility. Is it the chemicals that people like to blame the chemicals in the food? And it's like, well, that doesn't help, you know, all this stuff. But you do see like a feminization of men and the masculinization of women. And I'm just, like I said, maybe I'm just getting old, and I'm looking at things. I'm looking at younger people, and I'm looking at these things. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know, what do you guys see there?
You see exactly what we see.
Okay.
It's an agenda, you know. It's a certain programming, and a lot of it come from, like you said, what we eating. You know, what we eating got a lot to do with how we acting. So, which leads to my next question: can you eat a sad way of, like, can you eat sad and somewhat healthy, like a lot of people kind of do, and be in right mind?
No. I'd say no. I mean, everybody's at a different space, because there's some people that they're on board, they agree with us, but they don't have it within them to do it for whatever reason. You know, I meet a lot of older people that maybe read the Mucusless Diet years and years ago in the 70s or 60s or something, and they will sometimes have a regret, like, man, I wish I would have taken it more seriously. But they get it, but they still eat really, really poorly. But a lot of that's that addiction element, and that's still part of that control mechanism, that slavery. Like I say, if you eat like a slave, you're gonna die like a slave. And so I think that there's some people that's better than us. So it's, if you're going someplace and you're trying to eat a lot, get a salad at a restaurant, use a lot of people will try to do, it's like, well, I eat salmon. I have salads and salmon every day. It's always like the worst pus mucus item, but they'll have that thing and they'll be like, well, I eat a little fish. I eat a little. It's like, well, fish is actually the worst meat that you could eat. And they're like, well, what? No, I thought that was a health. It was like, no, think about it. A fish, it does everything in its water. It defecates in the same place that it eats, and it doesn't breathe oxygen. So fundamentally, again, coming to an air gas engine dynamic and understanding of elimination of the body, any animal that breathes air is going to be a cleaner organism than something that doesn't breathe air. With lungs, it's that absorbs oxygen with gills. It's so that's why you get a fish out the water. It already smells bad to us because we're not supposed to be eating it. It smells good to a bear. Is it supposed to eat that? We're not raw. We have to prepare it and take the bones out and do all and cook it and do all this stuff to it. And but I think that in terms of it, if people's consciousness is there, that's what I like about getting them on and getting them hip to the Mucusless Diet Healing System, because it can show you how to transition from wherever you're at and do so at a pace that you're comfortable, so that it's not this big, like the floor falling, out from under you. So if you're still going to Chipotle or you're going to Taco Hell or whatever, there are better things for you to get. I mean, in my early stages of my transition, I did use some of that stuff to help me transition and get away from the worst things. But when you're dealing with the system, eventually you start, as you get cleaner, you get to a point you don't want those things, and everything, the good stuff tastes a lot better to you. But you do have to do the work to get to that. And so for a lot of people, unfortunately, we try to put this content out there to see if we can educate some folks and catch people before they get chronically ill. But with our state of constipation and our state of addiction, the addiction levels that most people have, it's oftentimes it's going to take a chronic illness before they take what we're talking about seriously, to a point where they become bedridden. They're getting a scary diagnosis. They're told they need to do some type of medical procedure, something like that. Then all of a sudden, where they might have been somebody, the same people that say, well, I'd never stop eating meat. And I can't believe you don't eat cheese. Like, you don't eat fish. Like, those same people change their tune really quickly when they get a bad diagnosis or they find themselves really sick. And then they come and they take a look at what we're talking about. And then that becomes the way that they get into this. Of course, I love to see people that aren't chronically ill take a look at this information. It makes sense to them, and then they get into it. But it's just this phase, the era of humanity that we're in. A lot of it's going to start with sick people that are like, okay, I need to get well, and they find this on that path. But I do see in the generations to come, because of the work that we're doing, it will be more people, because I am seeing more young people that are getting into the Mucusless diet that weren't necessarily sick to start off with, but they're seeing it and they're like, well, that makes sense. Let me check that out. And those are smart kids, doing that.
Indeed. Definitely. We definitely on the brink of something changing. You know what I mean? Like, even with the like you said, 2 years ago, watermelons weren't that good, right? Now, everywhere you go and you look online, everybody eating watermelon. I've never seen this many people eating watermelon in my life. So something is happening. People starting to get something.
Yeah.
And even if that's just wanting to feel better because they see other people feeling better, you know what I'm saying? So I encourage people to get into the lifestyle, no matter what way you in it, what way you can get in it, whatever way looks good to you. So, but the transitional power, I think is definitely needed. That's the real way to get people into the
Mhm.
lifestyle, by truly transitioning them and focusing on what they need specifically. Lashay, you got anything else you want to put out there? Question statements?
No. Did we address all the questions that you starred about the
I
takeaway?
did want to show you this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to
Prof.
answer
Spir,
any questions. If folks have been asking anything in the chat, feel free to shoot them
what
my way.
what would be your response to this? A lot of people in the chat told her to join the watermelon washout, read Kev Ramon's Overcoming Addictions book, which you can get at overcomingaddictions.info, family, if you don't have that. How do I get off all these foods? I'm so addicted. I tried to just eat fruit for a week and just felt horrible and so hungry and was having panic attacks. I could not sleep at night.
Yeah, so this is somebody, a very good example of someone that would need the transition diet, that shouldn't be doing a challenge, some long-term fruit only challenge or something like that. They really need the transition diet. They probably also would need to check into ways to strengthen the endocrine system, because if you're having panic attacks, anxieties, that kind of stuff, that's going to be connected to the adrenal glands, thyroid, check your basal temperatures, that kind of stuff. But first and foremost, you clean yourself out. And so that's a type of situation where a series of enemas could be a game changer. You get all of this slime out of you and waste. And as a starting point where you're starting out, you're flushing your system out, getting on to some transitional foods and finding that nice middle balance, having the right mucus forming foods in there, the right cooked mucus-free vegetables, and you find that nice balance for you, because it should feel good. You should be satiated along the way, but there's definitely a way to do it where you're not further damaging your body with the high proteins and the high fats and that kind of stuff.
Perfect example of what we've been talking about here tonight. That's why I wanted to put that on. Chastity Perez, shout out to Chas Perez. Enema is done how often?
So that's up to the person. Now I recommend when people start doing it to do it every day for 2 weeks to really get an understanding of what it does and what it's all about. Because if you just do 1 or 2, that's not really going to give you a real perspective of how to do it. But if you do it every day for 2 weeks, then you'll be in a better position to decide, is it something that you want to do every day? Is it something that you want to do every other day, a couple times a week, once a week, a couple times a month, at time during your fasting? So that's something that you would get into. And I do have on my mucusfreelife.com, I have a whole long explanation of how to do the enemas, and there's a how-to video and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so that's where that depends on the person, on the frequency. If the only time where I generally recommend somebody go easy with the enemas is if somebody has a very compromised endocrine system or really weak adrenal glands, then we're going to have to transition into them a little bit smoother and simultaneously work on strengthening those glands. And once they're where they're supposed to be, then you don't have any issues. But yeah.
And where
that was Mucus-free life.
Yeah, about to say, where can your guide be found? What was that?
So mucusfreelife.com. Let me grab it up here. And unless Brady's in the chat, I haven't even looked to see if any of my people.
Brady's definitely in the chat.
Okay, Brady, yeah, shoot that. Throw that link in there if you would for me, Brady. To the enema directions on mucusfreelife.com.
Okay, so we definitely got the website right there, mucusfreelife.com. Another question here, Professor Spir, what's your take on veggies during cleansing?
On veggies, so veggies are a really important tool, and I don't ascribe to this idea that fasting can only happen, or that that fasting or that healing can only happen at a fruit level. You know, there's some people that get into this mindset that you can only heal yourself if you're eating fruit. You can only heal yourself if you're water fasting. You can only heal yourself with dry fasting. For me, the system is all encompassing. And so, like I said, there's a lot of people where I put them on the green juice therapy immediately for extended periods of time. And in some of those cases, it might be a green juice fasting period, but usually it's just a daily green juice in the morning every day to start to neutralize the acids in the system, and it just really alkalize the system so that it's a lot easier to eat the fruit. Because there's some people they're like, man, I really want to eat fruit, but I can't handle it. And if the reason you can't handle it is because of your acidity, we got to neutralize that first. And so the green juices, the broom salads, the combination salads, things like the type of, especially for people that are mostly raw, but they want something to ground them a little bit, then I'll put them on something like baked zucchini that's very light. If you cook something that's already mucus-free before you cook it, then that's going to be something that's going to be really light and eliminate really well. Because again, that's the name of the game, is how well something eliminates.
Dope. And the questions are pouring in now. Everybody got a question now from Professor Spir. Let me get to this one there. What about clay enemas? And I want to talk about this because we were talking about clay enemas the other night with the Herodess Adama Alaji, and she was really, really good about clay enemas. What's your take on it?
So that's not a methodology that I use or promote a lot. We're pretty heavy into the lemon, and that's kind of the methodology. There are cases where I've seen that be beneficial. Clay, the use of the clay to go in there, and it kind of, if the really toxic gut and can absorb some of the toxicity and that kind of stuff. But I generally don't use that methodology too often. But yeah, so I don't got too much to say on it. But I do know, because Dammit, she's I'm real good friends with Takora, who, and they work together down there in Atlanta. And Takora's been practicing the Mucusless diet for 40, 50 something years, and I know that that's part of some of the methodologies that they use. But for me, I'm just not too into a lot of the clays and the charcoals and that kind of stuff, unless they're really needed, if in terms of using it as a tool. If I see somebody that's tried some different things, or it's like they really got a toxic situation, then I might get into get into some clays, or the GI broom that has some of the bentonite clay in it, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so they can be useful tools, but it's not something that I recommend that everybody just does just to do it without having a real reason to do it.
Dope. And then we're gonna take this last question for Professor Spir, and this is a goodie. I talk a lot about this. I've had Orville Douglas on. I've had Matt Fu and these guys on, and we've talked about sea moss. What is your take on sea moss? Do you use it? Do you recommend it?
Yeah, so I never got into the sea moss thing. That was another one. So some of these things that get real popular that are just, it's like it's the only thing like that we get into is the lemon juice and distilled water enemas. That's like our thing. But there's a lot of the stuff outside of that. The sea mosses, and for me, there was a period I tried some of those algae things and some of that stuff, but I was never impressed with it in terms of what it was doing. It wasn't doing nothing that real fasting didn't do for me. That just regular green juices wasn't doing for me. And so I like the simplicity. I like to keep it to where, is this something that if I did have a nice big garden, can I grow this stuff myself? Dr. Morris calls some of the algae and all these the pond scum, And it's where it's like things like that. I'm usually generally not attracted to stuff this some of those kinds of things. And some of that stuff, again, it comes from the additive principle concepts of you're adding, you're trying to put things in infusions of vitamins and nutrients and iron and this and that and B12 and all this kind of stuff. And I just fundamentally don't think like that at all. So when I put something in my body, my main thing I'm thinking about is how is this helping my body eliminate and clean itself from within. And so I like to keep stuff fairly simple. The only time in times of certain types of chronic illnesses, I find that a specific approach of the use of herbology can be very helpful. So I'm one of the only people that I know of that combines the transitional methodology with the strategic use of herbs and herbology. So a lot of people that recommend herbs, they just start throwing herbs and herbal formulas at everything. It's like you say something like, oh, such and such doesn't feel good, or I'm like, oh, take this herbal formula, do this. And people never really, because we've been programmed to take medicine, people essentially transfer their programming and conditioning to use medicine. They transition that over into herbs. And so I got a problem with that. I'm like, nah, that's you want to first and foremost see what you can get out of foods and fasting. Then in certain circumstances, and a given example of where herbology is really helpful is with adrenal insufficiency, thyroid issues, pituitary issues, endocrine system, the electrical system. That can be it can be very helpful to use some herbs that are known to help to stimulate. But again, it's not a nutritional concept. With that, it's based on a stimulant. You know, it's stimulating the tissues and the cells in these particular gland areas to essentially get them to wake up and just kind of, once they wake up and they start working again, then everything is good. But as long as you're taking suppressants, or the people that are on the high protein, that's where people get into the keto and they're like, oh man, I'm feeling great. And you're high, you're stimulated, but then all of a sudden your kidneys start to shut down. You start to get anxiety attacks and panic attacks. Why? Because that protein destroys your kidneys, destroys your adrenal glands. And so how do you sort of reverse that? Get into your fruits and vegetables and fasting, but then it can be helpful to get into some herbs that do strengthen that. But I'm the type of person, I only talk about herbology and recommend herbs when I think they're truly necessary. So I don't have like blanket, like, oh, everybody just go do it. It's like, no, there's a lot of people. I didn't do any herbs for the first 10 years of practicing the Mucusless Diet Healing System. I didn't take any type of herbs and no clay, no nothing. It was nothing, nothing that wasn't fruits, vegetables, water, just the real basic stuff. But yes, but those tools can be useful. But yeah, as far as the CMOS, they didn't get me into the CMOS camp. I didn't get over into that camp.
It's one of the biggest waves, man. Everybody got CMOS, everybody got herbs. It's like, where are y'all getting this stuff from? That's one of the things too.
The problem there, it's because it's something that people can sell. And so, and that's where we've always looked at with us. One of the reasons is, where it's just over the years where people ask, why isn't the Mucusless diet bigger? It's like, well, it's not particularly easy to monetize it. Most of the things that are popular or have their day in the sun, there's at some point somebody's found a way to monetize it in terms of selling something. And so traditionally in naturopathy, it's been the selling of herbs, the selling of supplements, the that whole kind of thing, and getting people away from really teaching them how to transition and use the produce section, use the distilled water and lemons, to learn how to use those to really do what you need to do. But that's, you're not going to make a lot of money with just staying there. But if you're selling herbal formulas, you're selling supplements, you got, selling special waters or, whatever that people get into, then now you can create a business. There's business models, successful models that you're able to get into with that. But that's the thing with us, where it's like, we're like, nah, just focus first and foremost. You focus on the food, and the transitioning and cleaning yourself out. And then, like I said, when you need the herbs and the herbal formulas, they're there for you. But, that's not something that you need to go break the bank immediately. Because I've seen people, they'll sell to somebody that's just off the street. They come in and like, okay, I want to get healthier. What should I do? And they'll be like, okay, here's $900 worth of herbs. Here's a cleanse for 3 months or something. It's like, that whole type of mindset to me is real problematic.
Yeah. And it's so many people in the community doing that. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna have to get a round table together and get all the great minds, because it's so much good information, but it's a lot of different opinions. Like, I hear some people say, you shouldn't do enemas, you should do enemas, you should. So it's so many opinions, but it's not like one is wrong or one is right. It's just what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So I definitely want to get like a round table together, and because, bro, I didn't learn so much information tonight, from you, that's what triggered me. Like, let's get this together. Let's get a lot of information at once out here so we can start cross-examining some of this information. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Indeed.
Get the communities. It's time to start coming together. Good with all the communities and those of us that's in this headspace of really understanding that the human physiology needs to evolve and change, and to take our own health into our own hands. All of us that have that mentality, we should definitely come together. And I'd love to do that.
Yeah, indeed, definitely.
It could
putting that out there, Lashay.
How the industrialization of the health and wellness has changed the direction of just holistic wellness in general. It's so true. We've as soon as it became industrialized, as soon as taking care of yourself became popular, which would be a natural consequence to just how sick people are becoming because of the lifestyle of the death culture. So it's like, eating all the poisons, and then, just now eating all the dead animals, and all of that's finally catching up to us because it's an unnatural way of living. So now you have the natural unintended consequence, at least by those who are consuming these toxic dead things. The unintended consequences: obesity, disease, illness, deterioration of health, just aging far more rapidly. And it's like, now that we're here, people are starting to realize, okay, there's something wrong. Illness should not be normal, but it is. Like, it's normalized. Like, being sick is just normal now. It's embedded within the culture. You go into hospitals, you can go in with symptoms, and they'll be like, oh yeah, well, that's normal for women around your age. So just because it's normal for women around my age doesn't mean it's supposed to be. That just means most women around my age are living the same toxic lifestyles as I am, and we're not supposed to live like this as natural people. But now that people are seeking alternative ways to live because they're not getting answers in these hospitals, these doctors are telling them they're incurable, they're going to have to be on medications the rest of their life, they're going to have to go through surgery and all of that. So now people are taking their health into their own hands because no one wants to die early. People got families. So now we're really open-minded to these different methodologies, and it's really just getting back to nature. And now it's like, of course, the industrialization, or just the industrial revolution, they interject, or they come in and they intercept or what is the word, infiltrate the health community. And now all of a sudden there's products, and now there's the veganism, you know, there's the vegan products, and the, you know, now there's Beyond Burgers and all these different meats. And, you know, now it's kind of being synonymized to health because it's vegan. It's because it's in this like strategically packaged green box with plants on it, and they're calling it plant-based, but they're missing the word manufactured plant-based.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, so, Brother Air used to talk about that, where he would say, because he watched that transition happen in the 70s and 80s, where the same people that were growing things and that would go into the medicines and would go and produce the medicines, those same people, when they saw that the trend was going in the direction of herbs and natural stuff, they started growing echinacea and growing the herbs. But it was the same people that were at the foundation of that, you know, the same people that, again, I often talk about concepts like the protein theory. That it's a horrible theory, but people don't even know that it's a theory, that it's not that old. That 1832, I think the word was created. It was this chemist named Mulder and this psychopath named Francois Magendie that used to starve dogs and do these experiments and ended up getting shut down by the government. But he's at the foundation of our concept of protein. The word protein, meaning first, protein meaning first principle. You break it down. So they were, and so our whole history of nutrition is based on people, sometimes psychopathic, sociopathic type of people, that thought that what they did was superior to all humanity. So they created a system of what you're supposed to put in your body, theoretically, that basically just supported how they already ate. Their omnivoric, pus-based diet. And so they create this, well, this is, you have to have your protein and get this amount of protein and get this amount of, the calorie theory. That's another nonsense waste of time theory. But once they created these structures, then here come the marketing teams and the marketers, just like they did with cigarettes in the 40s and 50s, where they marketed cigarettes and tobacco products as a health thing. Like this is a healthy thing to do to help you. And they would put you can do a Google search for, cigarette ads with doctors, and they have a picture of a doctor there saying, more doctors smoke Camel cigarettes than any other cigarette, and this kind of thing. And eventually they shut that down, but they're doing all of that to this day with things that are far worse than tobacco, which is pus forming foods, pus and mucus forming foods, where not only do they promote it in oftentimes real juvenile type of ways. When you look at the commercials that promote pus forming foods, you just see that it's often the silliness, just super silly. But they promote this stuff and have convinced you that you need it, so that it sweetens you in your ignorance. So when you can feel good about eating that Jimmy Dean sausage in the morning, I'm getting my protein. There's no history of breakfast like that, of eating all of this nasty mess in the morning. That's something that marketers created that. So that's what I mean. Yeah. People are living lives that they have no clue why they do what they do and why they like what they like, because they don't have to take that time to really get into history, really get into and know things. There's a difference between somebody that just reads a bunch of stuff and then somebody that lives something so that they actually become the beacon of that knowledge through experience. So they know, it's like, well, I know certain things that you can't tell me different. You can't tell me, oh, you're going to die without, eating meat and fish, and you got to take your supplements and your B12s and all this kind of stuff. It's like, I already know you're wrong because I'm here and I'm probably in better shape than you are, the person that's trying to talk mess. Right. And so So yeah, this is definitely a time of great transition. Is I see this divide, and I think the divide is going to get even crazier in the coming years, where you got the folks on this side that is trying to have some sort of a natural lifestyle, clean themselves up the best they can. They're going to start to get it and wake up on that side. But the other side, it's like it's going to get worse and worse. The man versus food, my 600-pound life, where you got people that are 900 pounds, and that's like one of them infuriating programs for me, because then I'll watch it, and what are they recommending to these people? They don't recommend, go in and get a colonic. Let's clean out first and foremost, let's clean out your system. It's like, no, they put them on, well, here's this number of calories, and get your protein here. It basically that whole nutritional concept, and they're trying to lose enough weight to then go get surgery. They don't lose enough weight, then they won't go get surgery that will then do whatever, cut out their intestines and all this weird stuff that they do. And it's just, it's madness. But I see that a whole segment is where that's going to get even worse. There's a lot of people that if they're really tone deaf and they reject this way of life when they are presented with it, then that thing is going to get out of hand, because this level of pus and mucus eating is not sustainable. The mainstream lifestyles and that kind of stuff, it's not sustainable. So that's going to get really, really bizarre on that side. It's already
you mentioned it. It's what I like to call the Great Divide. And I've always, and before the summer started, I said you was going to start to see it even more with people taking their health more serious. And then you got the people who taking their health, just depleting their health completely by doing mukbangs and all of that stuff. Like the mukbang culture and all of that is just terrorizing. So so what I like to do is, before we head out of here, you've been spending so much knowledge, giving the people so much free game. Can you please, you got the floor to say whatever you want, to plug whatever you got going on, whatever you want to say. The floor is yours, family.
All right. So, I invite everybody, if you do nothing else, check out, a book, Professor Arnold Ehret's Mucusless Diet Healing System, annotated, revised, and edited by Professor Spira. So Arnold Ehret wrote the original Mucusless Diet Healing System back in the 1910s, 1920, and it's had various versions over the years. But what I found is when people read some of the original, and there is no real original version, because there's various versions. There's a whole history that you can get into. But when people read one of those earlier versions, there's a lot of confusion that people have with certain words that they're not used to and different things like that. So I clarify all of that in notes. You get the original text with my notes at the bottom to kind of walk you through it and define terms and concepts that might be antiquated or weird or whatever. And so, but I really encourage you, if you do nothing else, get you a copy of this, or you can, if you go to mucusfreelife.com, Amazon, you get it's all the different formats, PDF formats, and the book, and paperback and Kindle on Amazon, all that kind of stuff. If you're interested in our whole book bundle, so we published 7 books in total. So the other ones, we got my book, Spirit Speaks, and I call this a lifestyle book. This isn't a diet book; it's a lifestyle book. There's case studies in here. Some of the type of questions and the concepts that we get into, like this can go deep. You get into like volume 3, you start getting into some of the discussions of breatharianism and just what is the human body capable of, and what can the transition actually do to bring that about. Rational fasting. Everybody should read this book. The original classic OG book on fasting and fasting methodology, which surprises some people, because people think that it's going to be one thing, but methodologically it's very rational. It's right in the title, very rational. in its approach. So it's a safe way to go about fasting process. And a couple other ones. We got this physical fitness. This is a pretty advanced little book. Definite Cure of Chronic Constipation, Thus Speaketh the Stomach, and Tragedy of Nutrition. Then this is like the Cliff's Notes of the, so it's outlines of the Mucusless diet. And I actually made this as lecture notes for myself and then turned it into something that I put out there for people. But I could go open this up to any lesson and use the outline to give a lecture on any lesson in here. And there's, and this is also part of, I say, the official Mucusless Diet Healing System e-course guide. So I also have an e-course on the Mucusless Diet Healing System. That is a course. It's basically a college level course on the Mucusless Diet Healing System. You can learn more about that on the, if you take the free training, if you see that there's on mucusfreelife.com, if you go to the free training and watch the webinar, then there's a way to get the e-course at a discounted price when you go through that. So don't just go buy the e-course just on the main website. Actually go watch that free training, which is actually a good introduction to the Mucusless diet and mucus-free lifestyle. Check that out. And then if you're interested, you can check out the e-course. We have a coaching program that happens. So right now we'll be accepting new people into the program at the beginning of next month, but it's not something that we do all year. We just do a few months out of the year. We do this coaching program, which is a real intensive program where you're working with me, other members of the mucus-free community. We have a private called Mucus-free Social, our own little Facebook, off of Facebook, our non-Facebook platform where we are building our community and have the people that's in the coaching programs and the e-course all get access to that platform. So that's what we're doing, trying to take the knowledge to the next level, trying to take our physiology to the next level. And so I definitely invite you, if you want to just get on our mailing list, if you sign up for the free training, or some places there's you can sign up for our free downloads. They got some free recipes and introduction to mucus-free menu planning and that kind of stuff. You can find that link somewhere. We got all these different links, but I just encourage you, come join us. Let's connect. Let's take things to the next level physiologically. This is, for me, this is how we transform humanity and the planet. And it has to be through this transitional way, and where it can be sustainable. It's something that you can do. I've been doing this for 22 years. I know other people that's doing it for 40 years, 50 years. That kind of longevity is the product of an effective transition. And without the transition, that's where you get the yo-yo dieting. You get people that are feeling guilty. I got a whole video that says, don't be hard on yourself. Don't feel guilty. Just practice the system. You always just come back. You have a bad day, you eat some stuff. But when you are applying transitional methods, for instance, if you crave some bad food or some chips or something or whatever, but if it's night and day, if you eat those chips with a big salad and some cooked mucus-free vegetables or something, and you have some mucus things like that, versus if you just have them by themselves, is total night and day, because it's going to eliminate a lot better if you combine it with foods that's going to help it eliminate. But all of that is part of the methodology, part of the system. So I encourage you and invite you, check out the methodology, see what all the hype is about, get an understanding of what is different about our paradigm versus what other folks are talking about. And then, like we say, just mucus-free is the way to be. You just keep going down this path, and we will try to support you any way we can in terms of clean yourself up and take your health into your own hands.
Indeed. So much to offer the community, man. You're truly putting in the work. And like you said, that longevity and experience is like the most respected thing, man. Like I truly like I just got in the community, like you said, a few years ago. So like meeting you and meeting some of the elders in the community, I'm truly honored and I'm truly a student. So I really respect your work. I really respect what you do, man. I'm honored to be, having these conversations. And we definitely gonna have to bring you back on to go more in depth about a lot more things, man. This is just for starters.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime. Yeah, really enjoy it.
And we can get into
Indeed.
theories. I'm into the conspiracy theories. That's what this is. We talk about it.
Yeah. And we always have interesting takes on all that too. All those different things, because it really is, when you looking at the world through the filter of the Mucusless diet and the mucus-free paradigm really does change everything. It's like there's a lot of stuff that changes with anything you do along this path. Stuff's going to change, but things change even more drastically when you start getting deeper into the system. But yeah, I'm down. Yeah, anytime.
Yeah.
That's dope. Well, with that being said, hey, we appreciate everybody for tuning in on this Saturday night Juice Chefs episode with Professor Spir. It was super, super fire. Thank y'all for always joining. Make sure y'all know the new schedule. We'll be back next Saturday with another episode of Juice Champs. Like I said, we appreciate y'all for joining Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Go to mucusfreelife.com. mucusfreelife.com to get all of Professor Spir's information. And like I said, agameherbal.com. agameherbal.com. Use the code LTaylor15 for 15% off. Thank y'all. Have a great night, and we appreciate y'all. Love.
Peace, love, and breath.